Welcome to the Business Leader Spotlight. The Business Leader Spotlight is bringing attention to those in our community making a difference in business. It is also an opportunity to identify the skills they have learned and applied to get where they are. And now, let us go into this week's interview.
Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of the Business Leader Spotlight. This week we have as our guest Michael Cortina. Hello, Michael. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us this week. Do you mind sharing a little bit with us about what you're doing and telling the audience about what you're working on right now?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking. I provide brain optimization processes that help people achieve peak performance and emotional wellness. And this has application working with individuals one-on-one. Perhaps they're struggling with something in their lives, and certainly getting that resolved for them so that they could be free and move forward in life. Or perhaps they're just looking to level up. Maybe they're not struggling with something per se, but they feel a little bit stuck. They're looking to level up in their career and get to that next level. And so I help them in facilitating that. Think of it as kind of like mindset transformation, only with a neuroscience base. There's some brain-based, neuroscience-based stuff that informs the work that I do. And with regards to what I'm working on now, it's really all about getting this word out, about helping people level up, transform, heal, evolve, and to do this so that we can make a global impact.
That's very interesting because a lot of times you hear about people talking about mindset transformation, not just they exclude the science piece. I won't say they neglect it or anything like that, but it's not a part of the process of transforming and changing mindsets. But you use neuroscience as, I'm going to say, as a helper, as maybe kind of that comes alongside of you in the process. Do you mind going a little bit more into detail on that, if you can share?
Sure. Great question there. Absolutely. And it really is a distinguishing factor to how people can really level up and transform. Many people talk about mindsets, transformation in this work and so forth, and they're really only talking about conscious level activities, things like have a positive mental attitude or tell yourself positive self-talk thoughts. It's only really getting to the conscious level. Well, many people who have been stuck understand fully that it's not a conscious level activity. If they could think themselves out of it or choose to have a different experience, they would do it. So that right there tells you that it's something going on that's substantially deeper within the mind, within the brain. Enter the brain-based neuroscience components that I'll incorporate into the work. And so if we just take one area, there's many areas that this work applies to, but if we just take one area, let's take the area of trauma or PTSD. What is happening is the brain has recorded the event or events that took place in such a way that it's being processed on an emotional level, such that anytime a thought, a memory, a trigger of the prior event takes place, it generates tremendous adverse emotions.
Right.
And so the brain science piece of that is there's the neuroscientist, the big buzzword in the neuroscience right now is something that's called memory reconsolidation.
Okay.
Memory reconsolidation. And just very briefly, sort of high level, think of it like this. If you opened up a Word document and then you typed into it, made some changes, and then you hit the save button, that document is now different. It's been changed.
Yes.
In memory reconsolidation, that's one component in this overall process that I provide. That's sort of getting to some of the neuroscience of it. And memory reconsolidation, it's sort of like that. The brain file, the data, the brain is a giant computer. The data file gets opened up, and then there's reprocessing that takes place, all of which does not require the individual to relive or re-experience pain, which is a dramatic difference to many approaches out there. This is much more gentle and uplifting. And then once the brain has reprocessed the data related to the memory, you're hitting the save button such that it no longer generates the emotional distress when the person thinks of it or is reminded of it.
Very interesting that to be able to take both the conscious activity and I'll say the scientific wiring pieces of how our brain operates and being able to put them together to be able to help people, optimize their brain performance and maintain or even regain some emotional wellness. Now, one of the things I noticed, we've kind of said it a couple of times, is this phrase emotional wellness. How would you define what emotional wellness is, if you don't mind sharing with us?
Sure. So when I think of emotional wellness, I put it under the lens. I look through the lens of what I call brain optimization, because of the brain science pieces. And so how I would define that, how I define brain optimization, is it's a process of getting the brain to respond to life in the most enticing and optimal way possible. And so when I'm talking about life, I'm talking about to experience, I'm referencing experiences, present moment events that are taking place. I'm referencing memories, and I'm also referring to what I call projections, things in the future that haven't happened yet. If you'll notice, a lot of people tend to get worried about things that haven't happened yet. So all of this has an impact on emotional wellness when things aren't working as optimally as they can work. And so I look at emotional wellness as getting the brain optimized. What does getting the brain optimized mean? It means going through processes to get the brain to respond to life in the most enticing and optimal way possible.
Interesting. Thank you for helping understand what you mean when you say the phrase emotional wellness, and being able to understand that emotions and the brain, they work together. There's a symbiosis, I'll say, between the two. It's not one or the other. They both have to operate together. And thank you for sharing that definition and how the two work together. So if somebody, go ahead.
Absolutely. And you're bringing up a great point that they go together and they accompany you wherever you go. And this, I get really big on this one because I think it helps. Part of my passion is smashing stigma, right? And so if you think about someone said, hey, the meeting's about to begin, come in the conference room, the meeting's about to begin. By the way, check your gallbladder at the door. What? You laugh at the ridiculousness of that. Like, okay, I'm going to leave my gallbladder in the hallway while I go into the meeting. And yet somehow it's bananas, right? And yet somehow there's this expectation that we leave our brain, we leave our emotions, we leave out of work environments and corporate environments and so forth. Now, I'm not suggesting it's a good idea to be just throwing up emotions at every single meeting, at every interaction when you're doing business and you're going about your day. I'm not suggesting that. But what I am saying is this whole notion that it's like non-existent. It's like, well, your brain gets checked at the door. Now it's time for the meeting. And none of these dynamics or these factors or the emotions should bleed into the workplace is quite ridiculous. It's kind of like saying leave your gallbladder at the door.
Right.
And so So thank you. I love to raise awareness on that.
No, thank you for sharing that. And it gives a very practical picture of how we tend to think about emotions and the conscious thinking functions of our brain. Is like, okay, this is very process oriented. We need to do X, Y, and Z, but there's no emotional involvement and things like that. But there may not be a direct emotional, or what I'm hearing you say is there may not be a direct emotional involvement in terms of you may not feel excitement by going into that meeting, but there is some emotion that's coming along with you when you enter the door into that meeting that you can't just leave at the door, so to speak.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, the whole notion that you shouldn't feel this or you shouldn't feel that is, and again, please understand, sometimes when somebody says something, what the brain likes to do is go to the polar opposite. So what I'm not suggesting is that everyone is just having a big hug party, or we're all crying, or we're all, just throwing up emotions all over the place. Not at all.
Right.
And similarly, I'm suggesting the idea that, well, there should really be no feeling about this. This is what the company needs to do. This is the next project. Is equivalent to saying check your gallbladder at the door. It's just not very realistic.
Right. Yeah, thank you for sharing that and helping to bring some light to that, and maybe even clearing up some misunderstandings about it. So for the last 6, 7, 8 months now, we've all been in this sheltered state. Have you seen an increased need for people to check their emotional well-being, and possibly just some indicators as to identify if there's some areas where you may not be emotionally well? How would you be able to identify those?
Yeah, great question. I think two things are happening. One is it's really shining a light on bringing this into awareness, bringing this into the public eye more, which is a great thing for smashing stigma. I'm seeing more discussion about the impact that this isolation and the quarantines and so forth are having on people. So I've certainly seen an increase in conversation and talking points about it. And then, yes, unfortunately, you're hearing some alarming statistics as well, such as during quarantine, you're seeing all sorts of things on the increase, such as anxiety, abuse, domestic violence, alcohol and substance abuse. There's real impact to being in isolation, that it's absolutely affecting people. And I think there's a need more than ever for people to reach out and get some assistance. I think one of the things that people can tune into is noticing. Am I feeling more irritable? Am I feeling more sad? Am I feeling more angry? Do I tend to feel guilty or anxious? Is my ability to focus, has my thought process, my cognition been impacted? I don't seem as sharp or as focused, distracted much more easily. Mm-hmm. Am I noticing just an overall sense of being and thinking and feeling less well than I ordinarily do? And by noticing these things, just sort of, noticing if that's happening, habits, behaviors, you can look at behaviors. Do I find that I'm watching a lot more TV? Am I much more sedentary? Am I eating much more junk food? Am I putting on weight? Am I not as in good a shape as I was? There's all sorts of thinking and feeling and behavioral indicators that people can notice and see if they're doing just as well. Yay, that's great. Or if there's been some dip in any of these areas, some decline in any of these areas.
Okay. Yeah, I would think that there would, as you were talking, just some of the different areas where people have to, being at home, being isolated from their family, their friends, their loved ones. And it's that those different concerns would creep into life, whether it's, whether watching more television, eating more, or, drinking more, whatever the habits that have occurred that people have picked up. Because I know one of the things I've been addressing with myself is I noticed since this time I watch more television than I've ever done previously. And it was like, why did I start doing that? It's not because I was really interested in a television show, but there's not always this flurry of activity that I have to be doing something at this moment. So you take those extra 10, 15 minutes, which turns into an hour, 2 hours, and you notice, hey, I'm watching a lot more television than I really want to watch. I can go do something else. Also, if somebody, like in the example of myself, if I noticed something a lot like that happening in my life, it's not something that's necessarily where I should go get help. If I'm, if I know that I'm drinking more, I know I need to go get help. If there's something where I know I need to go get help, where it's something greater, but it's a small thing, like maybe picking up a bad habit of, watching more television, eating more unhealthy snacks, things like that. Are there some things that you recommend that can kind of reset the mindset, to readjust our emotions at that point, to kind of reset things to get us back on the right track?
Yeah. There's a couple things. One thing that people can do is have what I'll call mindful awareness without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So many times when people are noticing things about themselves, and they're noticing things that maybe are not working so well in their lives, then what happens is the brain likes to apply value-based judgment on that,
Mm-hmm.
and meaning and messages to it. And so people start getting down on themselves. So when I'm saying notice it, I would look through the filtration process of mindful awareness without judgment. So you just notice it. Well, I noticed that I put on 10 pounds. I noticed that I'm watching hours of television. I noticed that, my workouts, I've sort of stopped working out, or I haven't worked out one day. You just notice it without judgment. Judgments, the value-based judgments, is when people start to have real negative impact. And so that's one thing. And then look at engaging in some activities, whether it's exercise, movement, any kind of movement, just moving the body. The body's designed to be. So exercise, whether that's weights, whether it's cardiovascular, whether it's yoga, it's something else. Eating well, looking at the fuel intake. It's a fuel source. What is the intake that's going in? High octane fuel. Sleep. Make sure you're getting good sleep. Other things is to follow your passion. So if you do happen to have downtime, instead of watching 2 hours of TV, well, I had this passion. I always wanted to do X. Or I thought, how cool would it be to do this for people, or this for a business or a product? Take action on that. Start taking action on your passions. Tune into what allows you to live in a way that is authentic and genuine.
Mhm.
And it will really put you on a great path.
Oh, thank you for sharing some of those different keys and giving me some tools to be able to address some of those things that I found in myself, and hopefully other people will be able to take them as well. Now, we brought up this phrase a couple different times, and in researching and looking into you a little bit, brain optimization came up, and we've talked about it briefly. But when I think of the phrase brain optimization, I think that, well, is there something wrong with the brain? Can you talk about, what you mean by that phrase? Is there something wrong with how the brain operates, or is there something more specific that you're conveying when you think about that phrase and you say that phrase?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. So, certainly the brain is an amazing organ and does all sorts of wonderful things for us, to be sure. And at the same time, the way it's structured and organized and even laid out is a complete setup for a dysfunctional mess. Yes, there's absolutely all kinds of things going wrong with the way the brain processes and interprets information. One of the things that happens is it responds to stress. It responds to difficult memories. It responds to some challenges as if your life is on the line. Mm-hmm. And so, somebody says, well, we'll give the one example. Let's say an event that has transpired in the past. Let's say somebody got jumped and robbed, mm-hmm. and got beat up pretty good. And so anytime they think about it or talk about it, they freak out. They start getting really anxious. Their heart starts going. They start clenching up. They get angry. They cry, whatever. They start having this whole strong emotional reaction. Now, what the brain is doing there, is preparing the body to take action right there in the present moment. Okay. And in that present moment, there's nothing to take action about. Mm-hmm. So the brain is responding to the event that already transpired as if the event's happening right now, which is why people have these emotional abreactions when the stuff comes up. Now, you say to the person, they're sort of having this strong reaction, and you say, well, hey, you're not getting jumped and beat up and robbed right now. And the person says, no kidding. So what does that tell you? That tells you that it's not a conscious process. It's not a thought process. I meet with many, many people who are really, really intelligent people. Met with a lot of people who are far more intelligent than me. And yet there they sit across from me. And why is that? Because what's going on is not a product or an outcome, rather, of thought, mm-hmm. of logic. If that were the case, people would just say, I think I want to feel better, and now I choose to feel better, and they feel better. I wouldn't even have an industry to work in. I'd have to go do something else. But it's not so much the case. And as I meet with, I've met with cardiac surgeons and psychiatrists and, people that certainly know more about the brain and the body than I do. And yet there they sit across from me. So it's not a problem of intellect or of thought. Mm-hmm. And so what that lends itself to then is, as these people are coming in to connect with me, is going through this process of brain optimization so that you can address the deeper levels, the deeper structures of what's going on and get it reprocessed there, because it's certainly not a choice. I don't think people are waking up every day and saying, today's the day. I'm going to try as hard as I can to feel as bad as I can. So, yeah, the brain will do that. It'll respond to events that have already transpired as if they're happening right now. It will also do all sorts of filter and distortion and add meaning to things that don't exist. So we're standing on an intersection and there's a car accident, and I say, "Oh man, look at that! It was the red car's fault." And you're on the other corner and you're saying, "I don't know what you saw, dude, but it was the white car's fault." And there's someone across the street who says, "Hey guys, it had nothing to do with the red or the white car. Did you notice this?" So everyone has a different perception of the same event.
Right.
Now that's sort of a benign example of what's happening, who's at fault in this minor car accident. But this has real impact as people's brains start applying that to their own personal lives. And then they start looking through things filtered. Well, she was kind of short with me. She must not like me. She must maybe my shirt is ugly. I knew I shouldn't have wore this shirt today. And all these sorts of, it can have nothing to do with you at all.
Right.
Or the brain will apply meaning to things where no meaning exists. And you take a woman who is absolutely stunning, and here in the United States, she's beautiful, and people are drawn to her beauty. And then you take her and you put her in the middle of a rainforest with some indigenous tribe, and nobody looks at her twice. They don't even look at her. Well, clearly the beauty isn't inherent to her. It's a product of the perception of what's going on in the viewer.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that some of these things are culturally defined. And so the brain is, and so she's beautiful here, and over here she's just like, another shrub. No one's going to look at her. They're going to look at, the other woman who is indigenous to the tribe. So the brain is doing all sorts of things that are causing chaos in our lives. And you could pretty much figure that anybody you're talking to, if you know nothing else about them, you know that there's brain dysfunction going on. and let me just say, by nature, I'm a pretty optimistic person, and I'm a strengths-oriented person, but I'm just keeping it real. I'm not doing this. I'm not, suggesting everyone's a hot mess out there. It's just the way the brain is designed, right? It's just the way it's designed. It does all these things. It gives interpretations. Everything that comes in is filtered. It's all filtered. And that filtration causes distortion, which for a lot of people can cause emotional dis-ease, emotional unwellness.
Yeah. Very interesting. Just understanding how the brain impacts so many different things, just like you talked about, just the filter that we all have in how we see information or how we interpret the same scene. I think there was a movie, if I can't think of the name right now, it escapes me. It's probably going to come to me right as I'm talking about something else, but it's vantage points. Basically, several different people see the same thing, but they all see a different perspective of it. And that's how I understand you talking about how the brain operates, where yes, it sees something, but to some degree it sees what it's looking for, not necessarily what's there, if I'm understanding things correctly.
Well, that's a great point. Yeah, confirmation bias. It certainly can be seeing what it's looking for certain, and it could be seeing things that are fitting a narrative based on prior experiences. Yeah.
Okay. So I know this question is loaded, so I'm not asking you to try to give me all of the answers in one fell swoop, but if you would kind of condense and identify, how do you go about optimizing the brain's performance?
Excuse me. Yeah. Great question. Well, there's certainly things that one can do themselves to sort of start the foundation. Just foundational things that folks can do for themselves. Some of the things I mentioned earlier, looking at, getting proper sleep. I think if anybody goes to, unless you're in a manic episode, by the way, if you're in a manic episode, person's experiencing mania, as in bipolar disorder, they can go for days and days and days and days with very little sleep, no sleep, maybe 2 hours over 5 days. The difference is when the person's in a manic episode, they don't miss it. They don't miss the sleep at all. Now, if you or I go for 5 days with a grand total of 2 hours of sleep, pretty soon we're both acting like giant toddlers. It's going to have a real impact on our mood and how we handle life, right?
Right.
So there's certain, foundational things. Like I said, sleep, nutrition, exercise, mental stimulation in terms of reading or researching or putting some mental energy into those hobbies and passions that you have in life. These are all foundational things that can set the stage for you. In terms of really leveling up, it often does require a experiential collaborative process. And here's my poster child. I feel very strongly about this. And I have no other way to say it other than just to be completely real with it. It has, even if I didn't work in this industry, just think about this for a moment. I've met with so many people over the years who have spent lots of time and energy and money engaging in self-help stuff. Like they bought every self-help book in the aisle over at Barnes and Nobles or Borders. And they've gone to the podcasts and they've watched the things and they've had some guru tell them, give yourself a positive mental attitude and think these positive thoughts. The problem that I have with that is, why are they coming to see me? Because it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And so much of the stuff, the noise that's out there is conscious level stuff. So to really get the brain optimized, but those foundational things, certainly anybody could do it, and you don't need another person on the planet to do some of these other things, to pursue movement and exercise and sleep and eating better and so forth. But at a certain point, there comes a point where the experiential process and the application of some of these neuroscience, brain-based interventions are what it takes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely what it takes to get the brain optimized and to level up. I hope that makes good sense. I always feel like, I'm not trying to, because it's my industry and what I do, I'm not trying to say, well, this is the only way, but think, I've spent decades working with people, and I've worked with so many people who've suffered for so long that I'm passionate about this, and I just got to put it out there real like that it's what it takes. If people could have done it on their own, particularly people who are struggling, if they could have done it on their own, they would have.
Right.
They would have. So at some point, I think it requires that collaborative process where somebody can apply the interventions and the techniques and the scope of all of this to get it to optimize.
Thank you for sharing that. I think everything you said made sense. You have to do the foundational pieces, like you talked about with the sleep, the nutrition, the mental activity pieces, and then going to that next level of understanding that. I've heard it said, and I use this analogy for myself, is that in order to improve something, it always takes time, effort, and money. So if you want to improve your house, it's going to take time, it's going to take effort, and it's going to take money. Whether you hire somebody to come in and do it, or you do the work yourself, it's going to cost you some sort of money in order to do that addition, make the changes to your house. So there's always that three-pronged approach, the three legs of the stool, so to speak, that go into improvement. So what you're saying in my mind, makes perfect sense. And I appreciate you sharing that with me and being honest about it, is that, for ourselves, we can start at a certain point, but in order to go to up level our brain optimization and to be able to experience that peak performance, it's going to cost us something, and not being afraid to lay it out there for us to understand that. So I do appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, I just met this morning. I met with the CEO of an operation, and this person was looking to get the business to grow and to go to the next level, but there was some mindset stuff, some limiting beliefs kind of going on related to money and the financial sphere of getting a business to grow. Mm-hmm. So that was literally just this morning. And so there you go. There's a CEO who's running an operation, is doing beautiful work, and recognizes that, okay, there's a little bit of a blind spot. There's a little bit of a hiccup here, and let me collaborate so that we can get this thing done and I can move forward with my business. Right. Look at anybody who's excelling in life, anybody who's really at the very, very top of their game. I think of I might show my age a little bit here. I think of Michael Jordan, but other people might Bron or something. Mm-hmm. And any top athlete, look at UFC, MMA athletes, top athletes. Look at, and what do they have? They have a team of coaches. They have someone who works on physical conditioning. They have another coach for the cardiac conditioning. They have another sports psychologist. They have a team of coaches who are helping them level up. Mm-hmm. So I'm so happy that resonated. It just makes great intuitive sense that, like you said, you got to invest.
Yes. So I do appreciate you coming out today, Michael. If people are watching and they want to get more information about you, how can they contact you? How can they reach out to you?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So you could go to my website, which is michaelcortina.com, MICHAEL, Cortina, CORTINA.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So I would say either my website or LinkedIn would be great ways to find me.
All right. I again thank you and appreciate all of the information you shared with us today, and just a little bit about understanding how our brains operate and that emotional brain link and connection that we have, and being able to take that time with us today. So I want to say to everyone, thank you for joining us, and have a great night. Thank you. Thank you for watching this week's video. I hope you were able to find one thing you can begin to apply to your life today. I would appreciate it if you would like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you have any feedback, leave it in the comments below. Let us know if you know of any great guests to be on the spotlight. I look forward to your questions and your comments. Thanks again for watching.